And heading west to Oregon. Richard, thank you for calling. Are you there, Richard?
This is Douglas.
Okay. Your question tonight.
My question is, if you use AGROTAIN, I throw out a percentage of my nitrogen dry, and should I use AGROTAIN with side dressing the rest of my corn with the liquid?
All right, throwing some of the dry.
Well, I would, is Richard, are you still there, Richard?
Yes, I'm here.
I didn't exactly understand it. You're wondering if you should use AGROTAIN both at the planting time and then at side dress? Is that your question?
Yes, sir, both times. Should I use it when I throw my dry units out and when I side dress with the liquid?
Oh, yes, absolutely. We've found a lot of advantage in both situations, so I would definitely always, particularly if you're not incorporating, and I didn't ask that question, Richard, so I'm sorry, I should ask that. If you're not incorporating, it's an absolute essential, but depending on how you side dress, some of John's data that we saw earlier showed a significant advantage with side dressing, dribbling side dressing versus coulter or pure injection. So definitely add the AGROTAIN in both steps.
Wow, another great question. I mean, that's something that you write down all these that you want to follow up on, and that's another great question. Great viewers, we know you're out there, and we thank you for calling, which Kevin has done from North Dakota. Kevin, welcome.
Yeah, hello. I get my urea.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I get my urea delivered on the yard to my tank, and I was wondering, can I blend the AGROTAIN in with it out of my tank through an auger?
Richard, I'm Kevin, I'm sorry. Kevin, yeah, you can actually blend it through an auger. You have to be, you'll have to learn how to titrate your rate so that you can get it on. You'd want to put it on in the right at the, when you're starting at the auger and go all the way out. But AGROTAIN is an easy impregnation product on urea. It goes on quite nice. In fact, you may even want to consider the AGROTAIN dry there on your application. It might be a little easier to use in an impregnation system on the farm, but it can be easily done. They would have to calibrate your how much urea you're moving through that auger and then how much AGROTAIN you need. So it's certainly possible.
As something as a common, then his question is for other viewers, other parts of the country, then.
It's a common question, and typically many farmers are not set up, so the dealer can do it for them, have it impregnated and take it right to them, and then they can use that. So it all depends on where you get your urea from and how you get it delivered. It's typically more often done at a blend plant.
All right, yeah, exactly right.
But if you're using solution, liquid nitrogen, UAN, you can add it right in the tank, right at the field, right as you go to apply the nitrogen. So it's quite easy there.
Very good. Boy, good information from you two gentlemen. We have about 15 minutes left in the program, so the hour goes fast, and we're going to try to get some more calls in here, as many as we can who've been waiting. And we go to Oregon. Richard, you are up next. You can turn your television down, and we'll be able to hear you, and you can hear us a lot better, Richard. Are you there?
Yes.
Okay, your question, please.
We use urea and ammonium sulfate together for the sulfur for our grass meadows under pivot. Would that interfere with our sulfur use?
No, using the AGROTAIN, you would treat only the urea component there, not the ammonium sulfate component, but it would not inhibit the sulfur at all. It would just, again, AGROTAIN stabilizes the urea, and you would treat only the urea, not the complete blend.
If I understand that, Richard's gone, but he kind of brings up a whole other area, as I understand his question had to do with irrigation.
Yes.
We haven't really talked about that specifically, but do you have any thoughts, John, on from the research side?
Two things, and Richard, if you're listening, please do this. Dr. Donald Hornick out at Hermiston, Oregon, is doing research on volatility from center pivot systems, where they actually apply the urea and then do the center pivot. And they're finding that there is volatility just like you would have from any other type of application. Mm-hmm. We have a misunderstanding thinking that when you put urea out and you irrigate it in, that there's no loss there. But they don't get that much irrigation on it. A second thing that I want Richard to know is that if he runs his irrigation through his center pivot as a fertigation system, there's a study out of Chile. We're working with a researcher in Chile who has done a study that says that 17% of the fertilizer that's run through the center pivot system is lost due to volatility, and that's in cool weather.
Is
That's
that right?
in cool weather.
Wow. I'm sure maybe Richard, like many viewers, have gone to get a piece of paper. They don't have it sitting right there. Give that name of the person again in Oregon he might contact.
All right, it's Dr. Donald Hornick at the University of Oregon, or Oregon State University, I'm sorry, in Hermiston, Oregon.
Very good. Thank you for that call. Go to Mississippi as we continue to get our calls before the top of the hour here. Patrick, you're up next.
Yes, sir.
Yes, your question, please.
Oh, yes. I was going to ask about putting the AGROTAIN like on Bermuda grass in your hay pastures.
Well, we've had some hay questions, so here's another one. AGROTAIN on Bermuda grass and pasture.
Well, I'm not a Bermuda grass expert being from the
I saw John look over to you real quick on that one.
He kind of passed the buck.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's going to help in Bermuda grass. I know that there's been a lot of work done in the Bermuda grass country, and anytime you have, you're putting urea on a crop, a grass crop, and in a high residue situation, you're going to have more volatility there than in bare ground. So it's even more important that you manage that nitrogen when you're in turf. I just don't have specific knowledge in the Bermuda grass market itself.
Sure.
Well, I'd just like to follow up with that. I really wasn't trying to hand that off, but I felt like I was going to be a broken record where you say, we look at urea, it's not crop specific. Anytime you're using this product with your urea on a crop, regardless of whether it's a grass crop or a vegetative crop or a grain, you're subject to volatility. And especially if you have a lot of residue that may be there, a high organic matter, it's going to increase the possibility of volatility.
And you say they're not experts on turf, but there is somebody within AGROTAIN who is, and that's where Patrick, again, still viewing, go to that website, agrotain.com, and there is a specific area with turf. Just click on that and then kind of follow directions through there. And I'm sure there'll be some place in there that will answer specifically your question and others who have questions about pasture or turf management of any kind. But that website is very, very valuable. Let's go to Oklahoma. About 10 minutes to go here before our program ends. Denver, you are up next. Am I saying that right? Is that right, Denver?
That is correct.
Very good. Your question.
My question is that I got my wheat planted late this year and was wondering about putting the urea on this year, or would this next spring be early enough, and what would I lose from that?
All right, another kind of weather-related question, of course.
Absolutely, and I think this is exactly the reason why this cold weather information is kind of timely and strategic because of the nature of the fall. We had a really late fall, late planting across the country, and putting the nitrogen on now rather than later next spring, I would, like John mentioned before, we would recommend that he go wait for next spring. I would recommend that he talk to his extension specialist and get their weighing in on the subject, but definitely I would probably generally encourage him to wait to closer to the time he wants it. Generally after the first of the year, sometimes January, February, March, in particular, that was Oklahoma, right?
Oklahoma?
Yeah, I would probably say he's probably talking January. He's getting close right now, actually. So, anytime after the first year, I would guess that if he has field conditions, he would probably, that's a good time to contemplate that.
Oklahoma State University's got to be a great spot for research as it relates to wheat and nitrogen loss.
Absolutely.
And we're coming up, I think, one of the colder nights of the year here all across the country. So our program couldn't be better positioned here. I don't know if you planned it that way or not, but it's certainly working out that way.